Let's look further now at this issue of the crunch on residential construction and development more broadly. Tom Forrest joins me from the Urban Taskforce. He's the Chief Executive there. Tom, thanks for your time. Explain to us from your members' perspective. Andrew Clennell reported some of the costs we're talking about across the board for construction, around a 20% increase recently. What are your members telling you?
Our members are telling us that this is really hitting all aspects of the construction sector. Doesn't matter if it's residential, retail, industrial, renovations, every single area is being hit. And there's all sorts of factors all coming together at the same time. And all of those factors are putting upward pressure on construction prices.
And it's not just the material, it's the labour market as well, isn't it?
So you've got shortages in labour supply, and that's come through the last 2 years of COVID, where we would have expected in any normal year about 160,000 immigrants each year coming into Australia. In fact, in the COVID period, we had a lot of people going home. A lot of labour just left our shores. A lot of skilled temporary migration visas just were abandoned and people went home to their loved ones, as Australians did come back to Australia. But the net result was, instead of getting plus 160 each year, we actually got negative 100,000 each year. So plus 160 times 2 is we should have expected 320,000. And then what we actually got was minus 200,000. That's 500,000 people less working in Australia than we would have expected just over the last 2 years. Now, that's had a massive effect on construction labour supplies, as it has had an effect on people that you might want to work in a cafe or a bar or in hospitality or anywhere. Everyone's facing the same crunch, but it's had a big impact on our industry.
What sort of, and in relation to, say, developers, maybe a smaller operation where they're doing 20 or 24 properties, and then these costs add to the overall, the burden on them to deliver, but the contracts have already been signed at a different price. Are they struggling to make ends meet in a sense? What's the situation for a setup like that?
Look, it's not just affecting small guys, and yes, that is a real burden, where you've signed up to a fixed price contract and then 2 or 3 years later, when the building's actually being built and you've signed up to a contract and yet you're facing 20% price increases, that's your margin gone. You're completely behind the 8 ball there, and it's not just the little guys that are suffering from that. I'm sure that had something to do with the problems that Metricon have faced and the problems that ProBuilt faced when they went broke. That's when the South African financiers pulled the pin on them and said, we're not investing in the Australian market anymore. That has real impact. And you've got not only increased costs of labour, you've got increased costs of timber. That started with the bushfires, and then through the pandemic, the logistics supply chains, the transport, all sort of disappeared. And you had up to a 35% increase in the price of timber that goes to build your home. Similarly, if it's an apartment or an industrial complex or a retail facility, the price of structural steel, again, gone up over 20% in just the last 12 months, sometimes even more. Some builders have long-term supply contracts, and those guys who have locked those rates in for a long period of time, they're okay. If you go to the market now, you could find yourself 30% behind the 8 ball, and that's a real problem. So you have costs of labour, costs of materials, costs of logistics with increased costs of petrol, for example, all of these things coming together at the same time as people are a bit reticent to absorb those costs with interest rates on the rise.
Yes, so let's look at it from that perspective. If someone was looking to build a knockdown rebuild or to renovate or whatever, right now you're looking at more in terms of the cost and delays.
Well, delay's the real killer here, and sometimes it's delays in the planning system, it's delays in getting the council to give you the approval, it's delays even once you've got that approval and getting the final construction certificate conditions sorted out, any delay is going to cost you real money. And even if you've got a locked, fixed-in contract, if you've got a choice between you paying your builder a bit more or alternatively having that builder just go broke and leave your job unfinished, that's a real conundrum. And it's a reality that more and more people are going to be facing in the next 12 to 24 months, because these price increases aren't going to go away real soon.
Tom Forrest from Urban Taskforce, thank you, appreciate it.